Welcome everyone, Dr. Naveen here from UPSC Medico. In this video, let's try to analyze UPSC Medical Science Optional 2020 Paper 1, Section B. So what are all the subjects included in it? We have pathology and we also have pharma, microbiology and finally forensic medicine and toxicology. So these are the 4 subjects from Section B. The question number 5A is from pathology. They're asking it from the neoplasia aspect, okay, or oncology, I would like to say. So what is the definition of the cancer, and what are the 4 most important investigations for the lab diagnosis of cancer? Okay, what are all the most important investigations which you usually do? So similar question was asked in 2017, that is, what is the definition of neoplasm? But mainly till now what I observed is 4 or 5 times they repeated this, like what is the difference between benign versus malignant neoplasm. Okay, this is most important. Now they went into a bit of lab diagnosis part. So they're trying to focus on the tumor marker part. Okay, what are the tumor markers? So that is one of the most key investigation for lab diagnosis of cancer. And from radiological perspective, they are trying to focus mainly on one of the key important investigation, that is PET-CT, which is latest. Very important. So you have to elaborate on how PET-CT is done, what is positive uptake of FDG PET, okay, fluorodeoxyglucose, what is negative uptake and all. You just need to focus on those aspects. So tumor markers we did discuss in detail. PET-CT is also there, and Warburg effect we did discuss in our videos, Warburg effect which is related to PET-CT. And next, what else will you do? PET-CT is for metastatic workup, okay, and tumor marker is for prognostic workup. It's not diagnostic, it's prognostic. Like after treatment, if there is any elevation, then blood study you need to focus on. When I say blood study, you need to focus on mainly on LDH levels. Okay, LDH levels are raised in whenever there is a burden of the tumor. You also need to focus on serum electrolytes, which are key in tumor lysis syndrome. This is generic answer. I can't tell you why you have to only choose these investigations, but blood profile is very important. You can say CBP is very important for WBC neoplasms to look at leukocytosis, and also RBC neoplasms to look at polycythemia and all. They are also cancer, right? So that way, that is one of the key investigation which you can discuss here. So one was the tumor marker study, which is vital, and 4th and very important, you are discussing histopathology, right? This is from pathology. Always the pathological aspects, FNAC or biopsy of the tissue architecture. In this, you can just go with benign versus malignant, what we discuss, how to differentiate a benign neoplasia from a malignant neoplasia based on the important investigations given here. So this is how you need to approach it, and always look at the weightage of the question. Next, 5B. A 20-year-old man was admitted with fever, nausea, vomiting, headache, neck stiffness and confusion. So what are all these? These are signs of meningitis. Okay, meningitis, neck stiffness, headache, vomiting and all. And there is gram-negative diplococci. So they are asking meningococcal meningitis. This is in the syllabus curriculum. It is a part of syllabus from microbiology, and also meningitis and encephalitis is also key in medicine. Okay, so it is an integrated question. And now what is the most probable diagnosis in this case? What I observed is, along with this meningitis, there is typhoid clinical scenario. So yes, from the syllabus aspect, from microbiology, I say infectious diseases part, instead of just asking lab diagnosis of meningococcal meningitis or meningococcemia or Neisseria meningitis, instead of lab diagnosis, they're indirectly giving you a clinical scenario. It's very easy. Okay, the gram-negative diplococci with meningitis, that is Neisseria meningitis. So what is your probable diagnosis? Support it by explaining the meningitis features and the structure of Neisseria meningitis, and also how describe the processing of CSF sample to identify the etiological agent. So start with CSF collection, okay, which segment to be used, and after that what are all the things which you look in CSF, okay, about the amount, about the pleocytosis or leukocytosis, about the color, about the texture, okay, about the protein content, sugar content, which is essential. So also try to give differential diagnosis of viral meningitis, bacterial meningitis, aseptic meningitis, subarachnoid hemorrhage. In these key, you have to go into depth of CSF analysis in this case. And what are all the similar questions asked in the past? 2011, they asked pathogenesis and lab diagnosis, complications and management of acute meningococcal meningitis. This is a mix of general medicine question too, because the management part comes there. And young adult presents with history of headache, fever, vomiting, altered sensorium. On examination, neck rigidity is present. What is your C? Similar question was asked in 2012. List the common organisms which actually cause meningitis. You have to elaborate here, viral part and all. What findings do you expect on CSF examination? Similar question in 2012. And what are the drugs? So it is again general medicine aspect. Discuss the pathogenicity and lab diagnosis of meningococcal meningitis. It is from microbiology. Again, laboratory diagnosis of acute meningococcal. So yes, from microbiology they should only ask lab diagnosis, which is key, along with the diseases caused. Okay, diseases caused by microorganisms and lab diagnosis is from microbiology. Etiology, clinical features, complications, management is from general medicine. So always be careful. There are only few organisms which are asked about the lab diagnosis part of microbiology. So in the lab diagnosis part of microbiology, the syllabus is different. And also from infectious diseases part of general medicine, the syllabus is different. For example, rabies is a part of general medicine. Meningococcal meningitis and encephalitis is a part of this thing. But here they are only asking Neisseria meningititis is the one. Shigella is there. Salmonella is there. Okay, from bacterial aspect, these are the three bacteria which are key. So that's the reason you get questions from meningitis or bacillary dysentery or typhoid. Only three will be asked. The same are in infectious diseases part 2. Now, question number 5C. Enumerate various oral come on man, very important one. Anti-diabetic drugs, both insulin, that is parenteral and also oral part. Now, what is the mechanism of action, therapeutic and adverse effects of sulfonylureas? So similar questions about insulin, about metformin, and very recently in 2009 again same. Instead of giving you sulfonylurea, they gave glibenclamide. See, this question is a repeat but a bit specific. Okay, it's a bit specific. You need to know what are the specific adverse effects of glibenclamide. But again, for an exam like UPSC Medical Sciences with time constraint and all, you can't be more specific. You have to apply your common sense when you're writing answers for these kind of questions. You can just mention the clinical use, side effects, mechanism of action of sulfonylurea as a whole. If you know exact side effect of any drug, if you mention that, you will get an additional half mark or 1 mark. But again, don't try to go more specific and waste more time on optional, because you need to spend more time on general studies too. So that's the reason you need to be a smart person while studying an optional. You shouldn't never do hard work here. It should be smart. It should be done in 3 to 4 months. That's it. So this is again, it supports the fact that frequent repeats are there and immediate repeats are there. Okay, so again, question number 5 is so many questions, man. When I say diabetes, see the same part, diabetes comes from physiology. So in physiology, they're asking pancreas in the syllabus. Okay, in the pancreas in the syllabus. Again, from pathology aspect, this question is asked from pathology. They're asking what is the histopathological features of diabetes mellitus specific to again the pathogenesis, and also the complications. What changes do you see in a kidney? What changes do you see in a case of blood vessel and a long-standing diabetes? And the same diabetes they're asking from pharmacology, and it's a frequent repeat. Just now we had seen it. What is that? Anti-diabetic medication. Okay, anti-diabetic medication. And the same question is coming from general medicine. So in the general medicine, they're asking complications of diabetes mellitus, and in the complications of diabetes mellitus, we're looking at diabetic ketoacidosis, we're looking at diabetic coma differential diagnosis, which was very well discussed, and we also looking at renovascular complications of diabetes, that is long-standing diabetes, complications associated with long-standing diabetes. Very, 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 very important. So as a whole, it is coming from the 4 subject, the whole same topic. So please never ever go to your final exam without mastering this topic of diabetes, and everything with videos is covered along with the notes in our video course. Now this question 5D is define diabetes mellitus, describe the morphological changes that occur due to its complications in the following: vascular system, kidney, eye and peripheral nerves. So this question is a bit tricky. These days we are only looking at diabetic nephropathy. Okay, diabetic nephropathy. What are the changes which you see in kidney, how to manage and all, we discussed in detail. Now see what changes happen in vascular vessel, internal hyperplasia and all, leading to thrombosis and all. What changes happen in the eye, that is diabetic retinopathy, and diabetic peripheral neuropathy. It's again complications of diabetes mellitus plus a touch of pathology to it. Okay, so again it's an integrated question. Again, what are all the repeats from this very important topic? They asked about complications of diabetes in 1994, and they asked about the symptoms and signs in diabetic autonomic neuropathy related to peripheral nerves, and with the help of diagram you have to look at the metabolic changes in a case of uncontrolled diabetes, where it is biochemical investigations for diabetes and follow-up. It is irrelevant now because they're not going to such a depth in 2020-21, because 2009 there was a major shift in the syllabus part. And cutaneous lesions of diabetes, so diabetic foot is also key and essential. Diabetic foot, okay, diabetic foot management and all, it's covered well in the notes. Okay, so define metabolic syndrome. Of late metabolic syndrome and diabetes are seen together, because metabolic syndrome along with diabetes includes uncontrolled hypertension, right? It also includes obesity. Okay, it also includes PCOD and all. Again, this question, yes, it is included in the diabetes part, but it's more or less it comes from the preventive medicine aspect, like how to prevent diabetes, how to prevent cardiovascular risk associated with ischemic heart disease. It's more in the generic terms. And again, skin complications of diabetes. What is diabetic foot? It's repeated again from 2002 to 2006. And a patient aged 50 years, unconscious state from street. So diabetic coma, diabetic ketoacidosis. And what are the renal changes in diabetes? It's a recent question again, 2009. It's not an end. There's so many questions. 2009 again. 2014 again, they asked a clinical question on diabetic ketoacidosis. See, patient presented with abdominal pain, dehydration, altered sensorium, and RBC was very high with ketonuria. DKA management, very, 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 very important. And again, question number 10, which was in 2016 again. What was this? They're asking, 2014 this one, 2011 this one. 2014, pathophysiology of type 2. And what are the complications of? Again, complications are very important. In 2016 again, what was the question? Patient presented with tingling and numbness in plain, blurring of vision, weakness, easy fatigability, bone investigation, blood urea, serum creatine. How will you classify chronic? Discuss the manager. See, this is actually a wrong copy. Just ignore. This is from actually ARF and CRF portion. Okay, so ignore this. A 70-year-old man was comatose. Again, DKA. Define impaired glucose tolerance. What is the pathogens of type 1? 2018 question. And 2009, microvascular complications of, almost a direct repeat, right? They asked about microvascular complications in 2009. Now they're asking about a detailed morphological thing. Again, these are microvascular complications. So this is very important. This question is a direct repeat from 2019 in an indirect way. So question number 5E, classify burns. So burns we discussed in detail. What is a burn? What is the classification given in the notes, and how to calculate how to calculate total body surface area of a burn. How to management is discussed in detail. But it doesn't stop there. First time they asked about pathophysiology in detail. What happens in a burn? It's simple, pretty simple. Skin desquamation, dehydration, shock leading to sepsis again. Sepsis triggering the vicious cycle, leading to death of the patient. Superimposed infections can also be there. So now, this part 5 marks can easily be attempted, but this discuss the injuries in the victims in a shopping mall fire and medical legal formalities to be done by the district administration. Medical legal formalities to be done by the district administration. Now, I went into so many details of like how to approach or attempt this question. See, logic here is simple. This is again from forensic medicine. Forensic medicine, medical legal report drafting is very important because as you can see, there are two questions from medical legal. What are the parts of a medical legal report? Describe how will you examine and prepare a medical legal report of an injured person. So from injuries point of view, you need to have the pattern of medical legal report, which is very well given in Narayan Reddy textbook of forensic medicine in the back pages. Okay, so when there is a wound, how to approach it, what is the depth, what is the cause of the wound, describe the scenario, enter the MLC number, okay, come up with some conclusion, what kind of a wound it is, and all these are the parts of the medical legal report, which we'll be anyway discussing in our discussion videos of 2020 paper. So the other question is, write hypothetical medical legal report of an injured person having sustained stab wound. So yes, 2004 and 2015 they're asking about the medical legal. Again, you have to file a medical legal report here, but I think here the question is a bit tricky. There are three aspects to this question. What are the three aspects? Number one, in a fire mall accident, in a shopping mall, you will see, yes, burns. You will also see asphyxiating injuries because of the smoke. I can say inhalational injury, which is key. You can also see people jumping out, okay, jumping out of the windows to get away from the fire, right? So you will also see fall from a height. And you will see people getting panicked and running here, and you will see stomping, okay, so people standing stomping on others. You will see rib fractures and all. So these are the different fractures. Generally you can approach this answer, but medical legal formality, first thing is triage is very important. Okay, triage, you have to classify who is black or moribund, you have to ignore, green or red priority. Okay, you have to triage this case and decide accordingly. And beyond that, what is to be done by the district administration and all, I am not aware of what exactly the examiner is trying to do, but I want to approach this question like, discuss the injuries possible with the shopping mall fire, and how to write a medical legal report, and what is the triage procedure to be done. Okay, I think this is what is done by, again, the district administration, I think so. Yes, fire injury, you have to give notice to the fire department. Okay, they will take care of most of the stuff, but as a doctor, triage should be done. The patient should be sent to the nearby hospital, and proper care should be given, and medical legal formality, MLC should be filed. Proper inquiry should be done into what is the need, what is the reason for this fire accident and all. And you have to make a note of wounds, total body surface area should be noted. These are all the things which you should be cautious of. And about burns, what is the extent of burn? What is the difference between antemortem and postmortem burn, which was asked in 2006? And a married woman was found dead with 100% burns in the body in her house. How will you establish on postmortem examination that? See, they're asking about antemortem versus postmortem burns in this case. And discuss the formula used for calculating total body surface area. So this we did discuss in our videos. So question number 5 is done. So they asked about forensic medicine, pathology, and yes, pharmacology and microbiology. See, it's a mix, patho, pharm. So next, question number 6 from again pathology, cirrhosis. What are the causes of cirrhosis? Similar to cirrhosis, we have etiology and complications of portal cirrhosis in 1994, etiopathogenesis and histopathology of alcoholic cirrhosis in 1994. Definition of cirrhosis of liver, again direct repeat, classify cirrhotic conditions of liver. Etiopathogenesis and pathology of primary biliary cirrhosis. See, that instead of plain alcoholic liver cirrhosis, they are asking primary biliary cirrhosis in 2000. And again, etiopathology of hepatic cirrhosis, management of a case of alcoholic liver cirrhosis, define cirrhosis of liver, classify different conditions. Etiopathogenesis, primary biliary cirrhosis again got repeated in 2010. And again, what is the risk of development of cirrhosis in case of, this is again we did discuss in detail about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it's a question from even our grand test too. So why it is important? One of the students asked me, what is the need for reading non-alcoholic fatty liver disease instead of cirrhosis? Because cirrhosis is nowadays rare. People know the toxic effects of alcohol, moderate consumption will not cause it, and all new technologies are available for management and all. But non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is like the most common liver disease in the community now. So that's the reason I think you should be aware of what is this disease, what is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis and all. Okay, alcoholic cirrhosis is fine. We are used to it, and you might be aware of so many cases in your practicals, right, about taking ascites case and all. But here please focus on NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So this is again the same question got repeated. So cirrhosis is an important topic, and we did cover cirrhosis in an extensive and elaborative way. Next, describe the etiopathogenesis and morphological features of bronchogenic carcinoma. The 4 types: small cell, large cell, okay, squamous cell carcinoma and all, very important. The same questions has come in 95, 2010 and 2015. First, again, pathogenesis and histopathology, the same question in 95. What are the possible contributing factors in genes of bronchogenic carcinoma? So they went into, yes, the pathogenesis part, but they're focusing more in the genetic terms in 2010. And what are the describe the pathogenic features of different carcinoma of the bronchus, again the same. And what are the problems in early diagnosis of this disease? Because you can't just do CT to each and every patient during screening, right? So that is the major problem. And in early diagnosis, the one more problem is you cannot go for invasive biopsies in lung, and early diagnosis cannot be done because the pathological changes, when they are very in the early stages of pathological changes, you won't find anything in the radiograph. Okay, only in advanced stages you will say changes in the chest X-ray or CT. Okay, and again screening CT is not cost effective too. So these are the problems you face in this. Enumerate the major etiological factors associated with carcinoma. Again, the etiopathogenesis part they are asking, and it's a recent question in 2015. Next, enumerate various non-selective COX inhibitors. Okay, so this question is from pharma part, and from that we have NSAIDs and opioids. NSAIDs and opioids, and what they're asking is, they're asking you what are the non-selective COX inhibitors, not selective ones, COX1 or COX2, they're non-selective. Again, aspirin is the major one. So aspirin, so many times this was asked in 95, 97, and similar classification was asked in 2000, and examples of NSAIDs. And this is a bit a specific question, advantages and adverse effects of selective or non-selective. And 2018, this was explain why questions are nowadays examiner is fond of this explain why, that is drug interactions. So drug interactions, please focus within the syllabus. We try to cover many drug interactions during our classes, but drug interactions explain why are more elaborately covered in our test series. If you look at our test series pharmacology paper, and even in grand test also, live grand test, our team is trying to include so many explain whys from pharmacology aspect. Okay, because at the time of teaching and all, we can't get into the specifics more. We have to give you a generic way of remembering the things. But if you look into test series, whatever is missing in the video course part, it is very detailed and elaboratively covered in the test series part. So explain why. So that's why I always say to the students, along with the video course, test series is also very important, right? So be a part of test series and try to learn more and more explain whys from within the syllabus. Okay, now question number 6C, a 30-year-old woman presented with step ladder type of fever. Simple. See, there is a stigma around just passed MBBS students who are just doing internship, and there is a stigma in people who are non-MBBS background. They're so worried about this clinical stigma, clinics. So though questions are clinical, they are simple. You should not be worried about that. Let me read a question for you. 30-year-old woman, step ladder type. You need to know that step ladder type of fever is in typhoid, and you have to look at think of the syllabus. Typhoid is salmonella is there in the syllabus, right? So typhoid for 7 days. Relative bradycardia is again a key sign of typhoid, and rose spot rashes is again a key sign of typhoid, and you will see hepatosplenomegaly in typhoid, and yes, and clearly they have given that, so you need not worry at all. It's an enteric fever. Now they're asking about lab diagnosis of enteric fever. So pathogenesis and lab diagnosis of enteric fever is a recent repeat, 2009, 2019, 2020, direct repeat. Okay, and what is discuss the pathogenesis of enteric fever? What are the different mechanisms by which Salmonella acquires antimicrobial resistance? Again in 2004 they asked about what are the microbial. So typhoid is also there in general medicine, the management aspect. Question number 7. So we're done with question number 6. So what are they asked? Covered from pathology, more of pathology, pharmacology, and a bit of microbiology. Now, what are rave parties? This is from forensic medicine, mainly toxicology part. Rave parties. Why this question is in your examination of 2020? Because the whole India is there is a sensational stuff by Sushant Singh Rajput suicide, right? So this whatever it happened. It involves the drug abuse part in the young. Okay, it has an indirect ramification into the community. It may be tough for me to answer as a clinician, but it is easy for you who are actually seriously preparing for UPSC, because you have this subjective approach towards this community problems. So what are rave parties can be answered in a generic way, and discuss the magnitude of drug menace in younger generation in our country, and what is this national that is NDPS Act and all. These are all current affairs or trendy stuff. Even in last year 2019 also there was a similar question from DNA fingerprinting is in the syllabus, right? But they asked about DNA bill. Now they're asking about NDPS Act. So from forensic medicine we can take this aspect or point like a take home point. What was that? There is a bit of current affair stuff or a trendy stuff in forensic medicine along with what is happening with the community. Okay, and even in the previous question which we just discussed, what is the role of district administration in managing a fire accident or a fire incident? Okay, so when you work in district administration, you will better know what they do at the time of fire accident and all. It is beyond scope of any book or beyond scope of my knowledge, right? So for these kind of questions, it tests your preparation level. Okay, if you can answer this easily, okay, you need not worry about why this kind of question is coming in the medicine or forensic medicine part. Again, it's a part of your preparation. So I don't call it as a bouncer and out of syllabus. It's only an indirect ramification of toxicology part, but more specific to the current affair. And it again reiterates the fact that when you're preparing for UPSC, you should be preparing in a way which is useful to the community. For example, rave parties, what are the different drugs which we use? LSD, cocaine, morphine, okay, mainly LSD part, MDMA part. Okay, these are the drugs which we use in which are used in rave parties. So that part can be answered from toxicology part. But again, the remaining aspect, the magnitude of drug menace in our country, what is the NDPS Act, are more current and trendy. But again, this question is not out of the bloom. When you can see in 2009, what are the drugs of abuse? How will you investigate the death due to poisoning by an overdose of drug of abuse? It was asked in 2009. 2013, enumerate the drugs of abuse among young population in India and describe the long-term effects of drug abuse on health, personality. So again, it's a generic question. Question number 7b, blood grouping, DNA fingerprinting. Fingerprints identification is always been an important aspect. So we did cover blood grouping, we did cover the Bombay blood group part and all, and this is again an integrated question what you see here. So how it is integrated? Now they started with ABO and RH blood group system. Now they are asking about various tests for blood and seminal stains. Blood stain, seminal stain, blood grouping are very important topics. When I say very important, I don't want to read all these questions. Just look at them. Blood stain origin in 1996. What is the red stain and what are the blood stain test in 2012? In 2004, blood stain test. In 2006, blood stain test. Even in 2000, seminal stain test. 2003, seminal stain test. And again, 2004 seminal stain. 2013. 2016. Okay, these are the questions from blood and seminal stains. Coming back to the blood grouping, in 1995, the disputed paternity is also an important topic. We did cover it in detail in our video course. So an AB blood group man cannot be a father of child of blood group O. What is the reason? How will you use the blood grouping system in case of disputed paternity? What is this? How will you solve with the help of enumerate 6 major blood groups? See what are AB and RH blood groups? Comes from this in 2018, very recent question. And how blood groups are inherited with the help of Mendel, and what is their role in disputed paternity? So this question stresses upon the fact that you need to be well versed with examination of the blood and seminal stains, and you should know what is the blood grouping and how this blood grouping investigations with the help of Mendelian law of inheritance helps in solving disputed paternity cases. And all these aspects are elaborately covered with our video course. Yes. Now, discuss the general toxicities of anti-cancer drugs. Similar direct repeat in 2019. What is the general toxicity associated with cytotoxic drugs? Direct question, direct repeat. Now, discuss the therapeutic uses and adverse effects of clonidine. Clonidine, there were questions. Explain why clonidine should not be used in coronary heart disease. Explain the mechanism of action, uses and side effects of clonidine, and why sudden withdrawal of clonidine causes rebound hypertension. So, clonidine is from antihypertensive medication. This is not a surprise question. It was asked 3 times before. Discuss the management of AMI. So, I don't know why they're asking this question in paper 1 section B. I think acute MI management is more of paper 2 section A from general medicine. But again, pharmacology and drugs acting on cardiovascular system is in the syllabus. So they want to ask you only drug related stuff here, right? Only drug related stuff. So discuss the management of acute MI. Similar was asked in 1999, 2007, 2011 and 2013. Okay. Now, question number 8. So, question number 7 is done. So, they're asking pharma, yes, again pharma, forensic medicine mainly, and forensic medicine and pharma kind of question. Yes. Now, again, as I said, Shigella, Salmonella, Meningococcus. These are the only 3 bacteria given in the syllabus, and they covered 3 of them. But now, why do you need to know Shigella here? Here, this question is about Entamoeba histolytica, the parasitology part. So within that, in the parasitology, in the syllabus, we have Entamoeba histolytica and we have Plasmodium, right? Now, Entamoeba histolytica or intestinal amoebiasis, they are asking directly what is the lab diagnosis. Instead of that, next year they might come up with a clinical picture of stool, blood in stool, the dysentery picture they'll give. They might give you tetranucleate cyst is localized in the stool microscopy. Then they might ask you to diagnose this as a case of intestinal amoebiasis, okay, caused by Entamoeba histolytica. Later on, they might ask you the difference between amoebic and bacillarides. And this is like they asked it so many times in 2010. Okay, same. Bacillary dysentery are different from amoebic dysentery. 2012, lab diagnosis of extraintestinal or intestinal amoebiasis. Again, pathogenicity lab diagnosis of amoebic. 2013. Etiology of bacillary dysentery, that is Shigella. So Shigella is also covered, and extraintestinal amoebiasis is covered in our videos. And what is the epidemiology pathogens lab diagnosis of patient presented with bacillary? So I am mixing Shigella with Entamoeba here because both Shigella or bacillary dysentery, Entamoeba or intestinal amoebiasis, they have similar clinical presentation, but there are subtle differences in stool microscopy, subtle differences in clinical presentation, and these differences are in detail discussed in our videos. Just go through them. And describe the lab diagnosis of cryptococcal meningitis. Similar questions in 2012, 2016. I think microbiology aspect is a bit predictive. Like if you want to choose one subject which is predictive from paper 1 section B, it's more or less more predictive. It is microbiology. Okay, this part is very important. Microbiology. Never ever complete the whole syllabus part. Similarly, if you want to choose one predictive part from paper 1 section A, it is biochemistry. Similarly, if you want to choose one predictive part or predictive subject from paper 2 section A, that is dermatology, because they don't have anything else to ask. They'll ask dermatitis, they'll ask lichen planus, they'll ask vitiligo. 4 or 5 questions they'll ask definitely. And from paper 2 section B, with my experience, I can say Actually, nothing is predictive there because general surgery is vast. PSM, they'll come up with different questions. Obstetrics also, nowadays they're asking preventive questions. So I don't want to comment on that, but these three subjects are predictive. Okay, like you'll definitely see straightforward questions from these three subjects. So thoroughly master them. Okay, and they're also high yield and high scoring subjects. Okay. Now, discuss the tests you would perform for the diagnosis of HIV in the window period. So, lab diagnosis of HIV mainly in the window period. Window period, you have to define what is window period and what is the antigen test which you do or antibody test which you do. Because we won't be doing any antibody test here because it takes time for antibodies to form and get detectable. So, that is a window period. You will be looking at either HIV RNA study, more of PCR study or all, or you would be looking at P24 antigen assay. These are the things you would to elaborate. It's only a 5-mark question again. Now, similar questions were asked in 2011, 12, 17, 16, 18, 19. See, HIV is also like the management aspects of HIV are covered in general medicine. Lab diagnosis is the microscopic structure and all covered in the other part. It is the microbiology part. It's a mix again. Now, CML, very important. 94, 2001, 2008, very recently was asked about the CML, Philadelphia chromosome part. Now, discuss the mechanism of action and therapeutic uses of itraconazole. What is this? Again, it's an antifungal drug. Last time, this was asked in the same question, similar question was asked in 2012. Yes, but indirectly. Ketoconazole has this hormonal side effect profile, but itraconazole does not have it. But overall, mechanism of action and therapeutic uses are similar. Mechanism of action and therapeutic uses are almost similar. Okay, just you have to learn the parent drug. So what trend I observed is in 1 or 2 cases, for example, if I say NSAIDs, they ask about aspirin. If I say anti-diabetic drugs, they ask about metformin or sulfonylurea. If I say let's say antifungal drugs, they ask about mainly ketoconazole. But now they're going a bit into the second line drugs, but a bit modifications. For example, they asked specifically glibenclamide. They asked itraconazole. Aspirin is fine. They're still asking aspirin, but sometimes they might ask COX-2, that is selective COX inhibitors. So though you are aware of parent compound and its therapeutic uses and side effects, it's always important to know one important point or one key point about each other drug, so that in the exam you will be coming up with a different fact, so that the examiner gets impressed. One extra point, okay, so just focus on that. But in the search for that one extra point, never ever ignore the fact that most 90% is similar to the parent compound. Okay, uses, therapeutic uses, side effect profile, mechanism of action is everything similar. So that is the reason in our pharmacology discussion we were stressing more upon the parent compound. If you thoroughly know what is happening with the parent compound, just put it there. You will get 90% marks, right? I think getting 70% is okay, but you will get 90% if you are thorough with one drug instead of wandering around all the drugs and wasting time, because it's memory again. You have to save your memory. And as I always say, you are not here to become a doctor, you are here to become an administrator. So only know that thing which will help you passing this stage. Okay, don't try to become a pro in this. Now, discuss the mechanism of action and therapeutic uses of mefloquine. As I said, the same in next level, like instead of chloroquine, they went into mefloquine. Okay, so similarly, chloroquine was asked in 96, 98, 2001, 2011, and even 2019 also. There is a similar question from anti-malarial drugs, part of pharmacology. So finally, we're done with, it took around 35 minutes or 38 minutes for us to finish off the analysis of the paper 1 section B, which includes path, pharma, micro and forensic medicine. So we'll be coming soon with the other 2 videos too, where we'll be analyzing UPSC medical science optional paper 2 section A separately and paper 2 section B separately. And what is my main motto or intention behind recording these videos? I'm not getting into the details of the question because we do have a separate course. Check in the link description, wherein you will get the notes PDF and also video explanations for that. But my main intention to all the UPSC medical science aspirants is, it is within the boundaries of the syllabus. It is within the boundaries of the previous year questions. Just an indirect touch. So don't bother about that indirectness. That is not a bouncer. That is not a complete bouncer. Okay. It's a bit integrated. It's a bit clinical. It's a bit indirect. And it's a bit trendy. That is current affair trend ones. Okay. So these are the 4 important aspects you should keep in your mind while preparing for it. But don't try to master those extracurricular stuff. Try to know the topic in detail. What is given. See, common things are asked in an uncommon way, but don't try to master those uncommon things. Try to master the common way. 90% is more than enough for you, right? So I'm signing off here. Yeah, thanks for listening.